Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SULS podcast. Thank you for joining me for another installment of the show. I hope you're all doing well and looking forward to an enjoyable and productive October. Yes, it is October already, and I don't know where the time has gone either. This week's podcast is a really insightful and rather inspiring one as I spoke to Jay de Oliveira. Jay is an inclusion, diversity and belonging advisor at Ashurst, and I wanted to get Jay on the podcast to tell us all about how the legal sector is evolving in terms of becoming a safe space for everyone, and she does a really great job of highlighting all of the wonderful initiatives at Ashurst which help their employees feel recognised and listened to. For me personally, I felt really encouraged and inspired while speaking to Jay, and I hope you all feel the same way. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Stirling University Law Society podcast, proudly sponsored by Ashurst Advance, creating client value through advanced thinking. Now, over to your host and Vice President, Jedd France.
So, Jay, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. It's an absolute privilege to have you on today. Before we jump into the episode itself, I just want to start off. It's something that I do these days. It's after summer now, so I always like to ask the guests how their summer's been. So, how was the kind of few months you had over the summer period? Did you get to go anywhere or up to anything nice?
Well, thank you so much, Jedd. Firstly, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here today. My summer's been really busy, actually. One of the downsides of being in the work environment is that you don't get like the long summer period off anymore.
Yeah.
So we've been busy doing a lot of diversity initiatives that we've had that have launched recently. And also in my personal life, I've just bought a new home, so it's been a bit chaotic, but all worth it in the end. But how was your summer?
Well, first of all, congratulations for buying your new home. I'm sure that's a really exciting time and also very stressful, I can imagine, as well. I'm sure that's not something I'll be looking forward to too much to try and get into that sort of thing. But yeah, my summer's been really, really good. Thank you for asking. It's been very busy because the society were really kind of, busy over the summer with planning ahead for the new semester and trying to kind of hit the ground running when the new semester started. So I had a little bit of time off. I obviously didn't have exams or any kind of uni obligations, so it was nice to have a little bit of time off in that regard. But I didn't really get complete time off from any other sort of society related stuff. But that's the kind of way we like to keep it in the society. We're always kind of thinking ahead and trying to keep ourselves on the ball. So moving on to yourself, Jay, before we jump into the episode again, I just want to ask you to provide a little bit of background as to kind of where you're from and where you went to university, because I'm sure the listeners will pick up that that's not a typical Scottish accent we're hearing on the podcast. So what is your background and where are you from originally?
Oh, and here I was thinking I had like the best of Scottish accents. The where you're from question is always a really hard one for me because I was born in Portugal, but my family's from a country in southern West Africa called Angola.
Okay, yeah.
So I spent very few years of my early life there. So my mom and I then moved to South Africa when I was about 4 years old, and I spent most of my younger life there. So I was there until I was about 15 or 16 years old, and then I spent some time in Houston and adopted this gorgeous accent that I have now.
Yeah.
And I also spent some time in Montreal in Canada, which got rid of all the y'alls I used to say that I'd picked up in Texas. But then when I finished high school, I decided for some reason it would be great to move to the UK. So I did a law degree at the University of Edinburgh, and then I decided to move to Glasgow to do my master's and have been here ever since, living my best Glaswegian life.
I mean, Glasgow's definitely my favourite city in Scotland. And I know there's a kind of fierce divide between Glasgow and Edinburgh, and people tend to prefer one over the other. But for me, it's got to be Glasgow all the way for me personally. What about you, Jay? Would you prefer Edinburgh, Glasgow?
Oh, I love how you're like, I thought we weren't discussing any heavy topics on this podcast, and you're like throwing me in the heaviest one. I think Edinburgh is the more scenic city. Like if you're a tourist and you want to see like the pretty things, I think Edinburgh is like definitely the more scenic ccity. But I think there's just something about Glasgow. It's difficult to put in words. That I really appreciate, and I love it how easy it is. You drive for about like 15 minutes, and then you're in like Loch Lomond, and you're completely surrounded by nature. So I do have a preference for Glasgow. but I am willing to change my answer if anyone gets too mad at me.
No, I definitely agree. I do think, if it's for like tourist purposes, I think Edinburgh's probably the way to go. But I think there's just something about Glasgow, like you say, it's really hard to kind of put your finger on. It's like a kind of community feel. I don't know, it's really hard to put our finger on it. I just, that's a bit of a side topic we've managed to go on there, but it's just something I always like to discuss with people who are not originally from Scotland. And you're very well travelled as well from the sounds of it. It's not something I can relate to myself. I was born and raised in Scotland, and I've never really left. I've obviously went on a few holidays and stuff. I've never lived abroad. So it's definitely something I can envy there. So obviously, I would have mentioned in the intro that you are the Inclusion, Diversity and Belonging Officer at Ashurst. So would you like to just tell us a little bit about how you managed to find your way into that role? Because I'm sure it's probably something that our listeners aren't even aware is a role that actually exists.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've ended up in this role. If you told me this even 2 years ago, I wouldn't really think I'd be in the role that I am just now. So I mentioned I studied law at uni, and then I did my master's in international law, specifically international criminal law and human rights law. And so I've always really been into the human rights kind of side of things. But when I joined the firm, so when I joined Ashurst, I initially joined as a legal analyst. And as legal analysts, we're usually trained across a variety of like legal work streams and areas. And
Yeah.
I knew very early on, like I pretty much knew since probably my first lecture in uni that like I didn't want to be a lawyer. It wasn't something I could see
Yeah.
myself doing. But I thought, I made it here. Let me just push through and finished uni. So when the legal analyst role came up, I thought it was a really great alternative for me. But one of the things that we're always really encouraged to do at Ashurst is get involved with our diversity network. So I became really involved with our race and ethnicity equality group, which aims at creating equality for those who are from ethnically diverse backgrounds. So we ran a campaign on addressing race, and following the tragic murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, it was just really pertinent last year specifically. It's pertinent all the time, but it obviously really highlighted last year. And I became so passionate about the work that we're doing and seeing the firm's response to that and people's willingness to address it, and how that shifted my own experience. Because when I first joined the firm, I was very much aware that, I'm one of very few Black people in the organization. And I was nervous about being myself. I was kind of always overthinking what people thought and how I was perceived.
Yeah.
But that campaign really showed me that people do care, people do want to be allies. They are very much willing to want me to feel that I can be my true self at work. So after having that experience, I really wanted to be able to do that for others as well.
Yeah.
So when the opportunity came up to become an inclusion, diversity, and belonging advisor, which I know is quite a mouthful, so I'm going to refer to it as IDB going forward, just in case anyone hears, I was like, what is that? So when the opportunity came up, I applied for the role, and I was absolutely thrilled that I got the opportunity to be in this position. I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's a really important role to have, and you can definitely tell just from what you're saying there that it's definitely something that you're passionate about. And anyone who came to our diversity and representation in the legal industry event that we had probably about a month ago, maybe a few weeks ago now, Jay was kind enough to come along and speak, and you would have seen there as well how passionate Jay is for the subject, and it's really inspiring for us to hear and see, and it's really nice to know that there's roles like that out there in the industry. So in terms of the role, Jay, what does the role actually involve for you in Ashurst as a law firm, and what does a typical day tend to look like for you?
See, this question always makes me feel
I never like asking it, but I just know people would like to have some sort
no,
of
I know,
feel of it.
absolutely understand. It's actually such a tough question because, and I mean this in a really good way, is that no 2 days in my role are the same. So
Yeah.
it involves there's so many different aspects. There's so much collaboration with different teams and even different organizations and some of our clients. But if I were to try and think of some of the key aspects of my roles, so the things that I would do more regularly than not, it would involve things such as like supporting our employee network, so helping them organize meetings or think about initiatives that they can run to raise awareness, or some events that we can run. Something else that we do a lot of is review our policies. So Ashurst is really is really passionate about ensuring that our policies are always reflective of the diverse workforce that we have, which
Mhm.
means that we need to make sure that our internal processes and measures are always kind of reviewed regularly, so that people are always feeling a sense of genuine belonging within the organization. Something else that I do, I would say, is probably organizing and hosting events, specifically around key dates of significance. So recently, I've been really busy working on our Black History Month event,
Mhm.
which will be which will be taking place on the 14th of October. So we have the author Afua Hirsch coming in to discuss her book, and it's called British on Race, Identity and Belonging. So I'm really looking forward to having her in, and we've actually had some amazing Black History Month events over the past few years. So last year, although it was a virtual event, it was still amazing. We had Sir Trevor McDonald come in to discuss his career. And the year before that, we had Akala, who came in to discuss his book,
Mhm.
which was called Natives. Next month is also World Mental Health Month, so we're running a whole host of events around supporting our employees' mental health and well-being, because that's really important to us. So that's what I have on for October, and then November is already looking at me for what things to organize for there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I do a lot of that, and then I think one of the final things I'd say is pretty core part of my role as well is providing training and awareness sessions.
Mhm.
So we provide a lot of training around things such as unconscious bias, and also empowering our people on standing up and speaking out anytime they see any behavior that's inappropriate, be that in the workplace or in their personal lives.
All that sounds absolutely amazing, and honestly, it makes me feel really proud to have Ashurst there as our sponsors, to hear of all the different initiatives that they have going on within the firm. I just think it seems really progressive, and I think there's a lot of good intentions behind it, and it definitely makes me feel proud to have them there as a sponsor. So, just for anyone listening, this is kind of a question I just kind of thought of on the spot there. Obviously, like you mentioned, you did your undergraduate and postgraduate around the legal area and law. So, in your role, do you really have any involvement like with the law, or is it more to do with like Ashurst as an employer and as a firm, as a workspace generally?
So it's more, I would say it's more the latter.
Uh huh.
On that point. But interestingly enough, I thought I would get away from the law in this role, but not.
Hmm.
It still kind of does creep in.
Yeah.
We obviously have set teams that do things, but sometimes if we're running an event or we're wanting to provide a service within the firm, you're trying to get new suppliers in, so that will involve contract reviews. So I'll have a very brief look at the contracts, and then we'll have kind of a trained solicitor who will then look at that in more detail. So things like that can kind of creep into the role a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear, because I'm just thinking, we do have quite a few members just now who are really keen and interested and passionate about diversity and inclusion, and obviously with our ties with Ashurst, I'm thinking perhaps a couple of them might be interested in thinking about perhaps going into a similar role as yourself in the future. And I definitely think it's quite an interesting thing to hear about. So, with the society and stuff, we speak to a lot of people from different law firms, and it seems to me, anyway, that a lot of the big law firms, and I suppose you can include Ashurst in there as well, definitely as a global law firm, that they're definitely making a big step forward in terms of the different initiatives and different committees that they have within the firm globally. I know different ones have like LGBTQ plus ones and things like that. So what sort of initiatives are going on at Ashurst which are helping the firm become a more diverse and inclusive workspace? Are you able to name a couple of them, just in case anyone's thinking about Ashurst as a potential employer in the near future?
Yeah, of course. And I think one thing I would say before I kind of talk about them a bit is that, one of the great things about like a firm like Ashurst as well is that you don't necessarily feel like you need to pick between maybe pursuing your legal career and the diversity
Mm-hmm.
aspect, because like everyone is encouraged to kind of join our diversity networks.
Yep.
So you could still really be heavily involved and even lead some of these networks. They're very much employee led and supported by our team. So we want to hear ideas from people who are experiencing, working day to day, and who are experiencing these issues on the ground. But some of the key initiatives we have at the moment, we have so many that I'm actually almost drawing a blank, but we have a lot of great initiatives. So we have our Global Anti-Racism Hub, which is quite a new addition, and it's an educational space that contains content aimed at raising awareness and understanding of both the history and present implications of racial inequality across the globe. And one of the things I love about the Anti-Racism Hub is that there's actually a dedicated space where employees have shared some of their own personal experiences, and also some of the resources that they think would be helpful for people. And the resources really range from podcasts, social media pages, articles, books, short video clips. So it's like you name it, our Anti-Racism Hub has got it. We also recently launched an inclusive language glossary, which is essentially a short guide to LGBTI plus terminology that we use to help encourage everyone to use the correct terminology with pride and confidence. And in conjunction with that, we've also, not recently, but we've also launched what we call the Pronouns Project, which just lets everyone add their pronouns to their email signature. So obviously, due to COVID, everybody has been working from home for a long time, and our Glasgow office was actually being refurbished. So it only reopened last month, so everyone had been at home this whole time. And so in the office, we usually would have people would have pride flags on their desks just to show that they were allies, or they'd also wear kind of pride lanyards around their necks. So having the pronouns in your email signatures is definitely a good way just to keep that connection going for people who can't physically see you or see what you have on your desk. We recently launched a global parental leave policy, which we're really proud of. So the policy gives the right to everyone to take 26 weeks paid leave if they have a child. We've also removed any kind of references to gender in the policy. So there's no references to maternity or paternity leave or primary or second carer. So it's really open to everyone. So both whether you're having a child, your partner's having a child, you're adopting a child, you're getting a child through surrogacy, the policy kind of covers all of that. And there's also provisions for people who are undergoing fertility treatments, and also anyone who suffered pregnancy loss, which is obviously a very difficult topic. We have a whole host of resources aimed at supporting our employees' mental and physical health. So we have things such as mental health workshops. We have a global well-being hub. We also offer subscriptions to Headspace, and we have an employee assistance program. We also have a workplace adjustments passport that we've had this in place for quite a while, but we've recently looked into this to kind of update it to make sure that it's, like I mentioned earlier, always making sure that it's representative of our diverse workforce. Sorry. And this Wellbeing Adjustments Passport is essentially designed to ensure open and honest communications about any adjustments people need in the workplace to support employees with disabilities. And I find it also helps to kind of break down some of the stigmas that people have about discussing disabilities in the workplace. I think some people are still afraid that if they mention that they need an adjustment, they'll be looked at differently or not considered for promotion or progression, when really we're just wanting to ensure that everyone has what they need to thrive in their careers. Yeah, so those are some of the initiatives that we have going on at the minute. I don't know if there's any one of those that kind of stuck out to you that you'd like me to discuss a bit more.
I mean, for me, just the fact that you're able to rhyme all of them off and to have so many of them to hand, I think, we spoke about it before on the podcast previously about how Ashurst, the culture within the firm just seems to be extremely positive and extremely healthy. It seems to be a real people first culture, and I think that's what, for me, it makes it stand out as a really desirable employer for me in the future. And I think it's so amazing to hear about all these amazing initiatives. And the one that you mentioned about the global parental leave policy, I actually popped up on my LinkedIn a few days ago, and I said to my partner, this is amazing. Like, this is absolutely sensational. It's something you never hear about. It's unheard of. The fact that, as a male you can get that amount of time off, it's just completely unheard of, and I think it's a really, really progressive step forward.
Yeah, we've offered it. Obviously, like this is like I said, it's a global policy, and we just kind of thought, it's so important that like often it ends up, just because of the way things work out, it tends to be the mother of the child who ends up having to take this time, where actually, it's a really great time for the father of the child or to bond with the child as well. And like both parents should be able to take this leave together, because it's an opportunity for everyone to bond as a family, regardless of what that family structure is like, because we know that, the whole mom, dad, child, that it's such a traditional way to view families, and where, we know every family looks different. My family was just my mom and I, so to be able to, if it means like people feel really happy, and it's something that they'd want to, something that would empower them really to kind of break down some of that stigma around, especially I know there's still a lot of hesitancy around, especially fathers or men taking parental leave. So we're trying to break down some of those barriers, and we know it will take time, but I think
Yeah.
this parental leave policy is the kind of first step towards that.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a fantastic policy, and like I say, when it pops up on my LinkedIn, and a lot of times you'll just scroll through LinkedIn, you'll read kind of things, you'll skim read them, and you won't really pay too much attention. But as soon as that popped up, I was like, wow, that is, it's really groundbreaking. I just think it really does a really good job of taking us into the future, and kind of reflects a more inclusive society that we live in these days. And one thing that you mentioned at the diversity event was, I find it quite hard to describe, but the fact that Ashurst have some sort of software where you can record yourself pronouncing your name, and then people can listen to that. I think that sounded really amazing.
So that's something I'm actually working on the side. So we've not launched that yet, but we're hoping to do that quite soon. Because I do think it kind of leads to people feeling included. I know that someone who has shortened her name to make it easier for people to pronounce. I know how frustrating that can be for some people. I mean, that was a choice for me, and that was one I was happy to make. But I know for some people, sometimes if you're given a nickname, if you don't want that nickname, or if people constantly laugh when your name is said, or I know there's some people who are afraid to ask others how their names are pronounced because they're worried that will cause offense. I feel like it just removes so many different issues. So yes, hopefully I'll be able to update you on that in a few months' time and tell you that we have that up and running. And it's really excited for that initiative.
Yeah, definitely please keep us updated on that, because someone actually mentioned it at our EGM on Thursday, someone who was running for the diversity, obviously welfare officer role now, mentioned the fact that you brought that up at the diversity event, and said that was something we should look at as well. I'm not too sure how accessible that could be for just university societies just now, but hopefully in the future it's something that we could hopefully implement as well, because I know for myself, my girlfriend is from Greece, so she's had to take on a few different names, because I feel like there's a real kind of British ignorance when it comes to people's names. We just try and make it as simple as possible. I feel like it would be nice to actually try and incorporate people's real names as opposed to changing it to make it easier to say. I just don't think it's really
and I mean, as someone who obviously, as you know, I'm not from Scotland or from the UK. I always find that really interesting, because then you have I feel like the English language is actually really complex when it comes to the pronunciation of some things. Mullingavi comes to mind. So I think there's almost when people see that something is a name is foreign, there's almost this kind of panic that goes in their heads, and they're like, oh, I don't know how to say that. Whereas I feel like from experience, my name's Portuguese, so it's very phonetic, but people see it written out, they're like, oh, I don't know how to approach that. So I just do think that would kind of help to break some of that barrier down and help people feel more included in situations as well. And that means, if someone wanted to go practice in private how someone's name is said, then they could go do that and then absolutely nail it when they met the person.
Yeah, I think it would be good for all parties involved in situations like that. I think it makes everyone feel a bit more at ease, and really does just kind of avoid any awkwardness or kind of uncomfortableness, to be honest. And I do hope there's no Glasgow enthusiasts who are ready to send you some bad emails for pronouncing Mulgavi there, Jay.
I know it's Mulgai. I know. I've never pronounced it Mullingavi. And you can fact check that.
To be honest, I when I was younger, I used to call it Mulgavi. I was like, where's this place called Mulgai everyone talks about? I've never seen it on signpost anywhere. And someone was like, that's how you pronounce it. And I was like, makes sense then, makes sense.
One of my partner's favorite things to do when we go on road trips is to try and get me to pronounce the names of stuff on the signs. And I find it really cruel, actually, because I'm like, this is so unfair. Yeah, I always get it wrong. I always get it wrong.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure anyone would in that situation. There's actually a few places in Scotland that definitely the way you pronounce it is not how it's spelled whatsoever, but I suppose that's a completely different topic for another day.
Yeah, definitely. It's one I'm very passionate about, Jedd.
Yeah, I can tell that, actually, yeah. So yeah, I did mention to you before, Jay, I wasn't looking to kind of speak about any kind of hard-hitting topics, but I do have one question that I want to ask, and I feel like it's something that I should ask, given the fact you're on the podcast today, and that is, in your opinion, How is the legal industry progressing in terms of becoming a safe space for absolutely everyone, regardless of skin colour, sexual orientation, gender, etc.? And can current law students who are ultimately going to be entering the legal profession over the next few years, can they feel encouraged in this regard?
I think my answer to this question has to be a bit, like, not has to be, but is optimistic. Just from the work I'm seeing my firm do, and our clients and our competitors and peers are partnering, sometimes partnering with us on these types of initiatives.
Yeah,
So people are willing to make that change. The change is happening. I think some of it is happening faster than others of it. So I do think it will still take time before we get to a place where we can say, like, right, that's it, done. Um, but I do think for law students coming up that there is a lot to be optimistic about. And yeah, I do think you'll see that that organizations are willing to listen to people as well. So if you end up coming to Ashurst and you feel like, actually, I feel like this is missing, we're always really willing to hear about that and then take that initiative on.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's really important for us to be able to allow people the platform to speak up as well. Because, you know, even for me with my, I have a set, like a very set specific, sorry, a specific set of experiences which other people might not have.
Yeah.
And even though I'm a diversity advisor, I don't know everything. I'm always looking to self-educate and also hear from the experiences of others. So there's always more that can be brought to the attention that we may have not thought of yet. So yeah, I would really encourage people and students as well, once they get into the workforce, is definitely, if possible, join your organization's diversity networks, be involved, and be part of making that change as well, because it will help to speed things up.
That's definitely great to hear. I know myself personally, I'm really encouraged from this conversation about the kind of the way the legal landscape is going in the future, and ultimately what kind of industry I'm going to find myself in once I graduate in a couple of years. And it's definitely just kind of filled me with a lot of encouragement, and optimism was the word you used as well, Jay. And I suppose to wrap up, Jay, because I feel like you're very personable. I'm sure everyone who's listening will have warmed to you. I know myself personally, I have. Everyone at the diversity event warmed to you very well as well. So just to wrap us up, what are your plans for the foreseeable future? Are you going to stay in the IDB role, or you plan on moving to something else, or any major goals, anything like that?
At the minute, I'll be on. I've only been in this role for about 9 months now. So I still feel there's a lot for me to learn, and to really get on top of. So my goals at the minute are really just to continue to kind of educate myself and get across as much as I can, and reach out to more people and network a bit more, just to see how much more of a difference I can make. And I feel like Ashurst is a very progressive law firm, so we're doing a lot of great work, and so I kind of think maybe in a few years' time, I would look to go to a different organization that possibly still has a lot more work to do, which I know sounds kind of quite weird.
Yeah.
But maybe somewhere where I think that they kind of need the help to get to somewhere get to somewhere where Ashurst is going at the minute. But
Yeah.
I have no plans to go anywhere anytime soon. I'm absolutely love this job, and it's such a great place to be in, where, you know, people can come to you and you can try and basically make a difference to that person, or even to a group of people or a community. So yeah, like I have no plans of going anywhere anytime soon, is my short answer.
In Glasgow, do you see Glasgow staying a permanent part of your life?
Well, for now, yeah, considering I just bought a house, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I've warmed to Glasgow. It's that thing. It's that feeling you can't put into words. Yeah, there's just a really great sense of community in Glasgow, and it's really nice to feel like I belong. I really feel like I belong here. So it's a really welcoming place.
Yeah, like I said, my girlfriend's from Greece, and her favourite city in Scotland is Glasgow as well. She absolutely loves it there, and I think, like you mentioned, I think it's just a community feel. I think it makes you feel a certain type of way, and yeah, it's just a really beautiful place, to be honest. But I suppose that's all we have time for today, Jay. So before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, and being so honest and upfront and open about your past, what you've been up to, and ultimately Ashurst as an employer, and all the different initiatives that are going on there. It's been a really insightful and encouraging discussion. I've really enjoyed talking to you today, and I also want to thank you as well for coming to our diversity event a few weeks ago. You were definitely one of the standout speakers there for myself personally. I know we've had a lot of good feedback from people who were there as well. You've definitely, you know, impressed a lot of people at SULS, and you're definitely welcome back to any other events that we do in the future. And hopefully, like I mentioned to you before we started recording, we'll be able to meet you when we come to see the new Glasgow office. That would be absolutely fantastic, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would be amazing. So it would be great to meet you guys. And yeah, like I hope to see you at Ashurst. So in your future career. So please make sure that you keep us in mind when you're done with uni. Thank you, Jedd.
Thank you for listening to the Stirling University Law Society podcast. Be sure to check out our website and social media pages through the links below.